Mr. Murali.
Question 3, please.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, with your permission, may I ask the clerks to distribute 2 handouts, which I will refer to in the course of addressing this question. On 5th November 2018, an article was published on the website, the Straits Times Review, or STR, stating that agreements with Malaysia on the supply of water and on the high-speed rail favoured Singapore. These arguments have been raised by Malaysia previously and dealt with before in this House and elsewhere. This time, however, STR added a malicious twist. It took the old points on the agreements and concocted a conspiracy theory about how our Prime Minister and the Singapore government corruptly allowed money laundering of 1 MDB funds in exchange for terms favouring Singapore. Mr. Speaker, the suggestion that we were helping launder 1 MDB monies or were reluctant to investigate are quite untrue. Singapore was the first jurisdiction to take strong action against the financial institutions and individuals involved in the 1 MDB scandal. Investigations commenced in March 2015 and have since led to serious action taken against wrongdoers. The Monetary Authority of Singapore, or MAS, undertook a 2-year investigation of both foreign and local banks. This was the most extensive supervisory review it has ever taken. As a result of these investigations, it shut down 2 banks, BSI Bank Limited Singapore and Falcon Bank. BSI Bank was also hit with a financial penalty of Sing dollars 13.3 million. MAS also imposed financial penalties totaling around Sing dollars 29.1 million on 8 other banks. MAS also worked to bring wrongdoers to justice. It seized assets amounting to Sing dollars 240 million, of which 120 million belonged to Joe Low and his immediate family. Arrest warrants for Joe Low and his proxy, Tan Kim Lung, were issued. Singapore also requested Interpol raid notices to be put out for Low and Tan. We are the first, and it seems the only country to date of at least 10 jurisdictions involved in this that have secured convictions of individuals who facilitated the laundering. 5 individuals have been charged and convicted for offences relating to the 1 MDB scandal. Investigations are continuing into several other suspects in Singapore. On 8 June this year, officers from the MAS, the Attorney General's Chambers, and the Commercial Affairs Department met the Malaysian 1 MDB task force led by Tan Sri Abdul Ghani Patel. Singapore has been providing Malaysia information on 1 MDB-related fund flows since March 2015, and this has been acknowledged by Malaysia. The information I have referred to is all publicly available, and obviously there is no basis for the claims of corruption being made against our officials. I move on now to the curious circumstances in which the falsehoods were then further perpetrated. A few months ago, in May 2018, a similar article was published by STR. On 5th November 2018, the same article was repackaged. It used a quote from the Sarawak report as a peg to reiterate the falsehoods first published in May. As at 8 November, this article had been shared around 1,600 times on Facebook. Some of these shares resulted from a concerted effort by a small group of users to spread the article across multiple Facebook groups, including groups that ostensibly cover unrelated subjects. The shares by this small group of just 7 users accounted for the falsehood potentially seen by over 800,000 users who were members of these Facebook groups. And on this, some of these facts and figures are set out in the handouts. If I may refer members to the first handout, which is the handout which has the ST review on the left-hand side, you will see that 7 Facebook users had shared the article collectively 45 times over 3 days to 39 unique Facebook groups. And in this 3-day period, about 800,000 potential viewers had been given access to this article. If you go to the second page of that handout, to illustrate a different point, this post was shared to 5 different groups within a span of just 1 minute. And you'll see the timings on the left-hand side of the extract on the second page. And on the third page of the same handout, to illustrate the spread of the article, the reach on Facebook just to these 4 illustrative groups amounted to something like 380,000. And you'll see that at least in the top left-hand box, the number of members on that group was close to 350,000. So very quickly and very widely, this was spread. On 7 November, this repackaged article was reproduced on the Malaysian website known as The Coverage. This report was then picked up by a Malaysian Chinese language newspaper, China Press, where it was viewed 45,000 times by 8 November, just 1 day later. 2 YouTube videos were also put up, translating the allegations into Mandarin. It is interesting that in this case, the spread of information followed a pattern that has been established elsewhere. A falsehood first appears on an obscure site and then gets picked up by mainstream media, which lends credence to the claims. I will cite 2 examples in the report of the Select Committee on Deliberate Online Falsehoods, which demonstrate these tactics in action. And as I go through the next few paragraphs, members can refer to the second handout by way of illustration. The first, highlighted by Mr. Ben Nemo of the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab, was a false claim about the vulnerability of the United States Navy. The false claim was first posted on an obscure website, then republished by a foreign mainstream media outlet. It eventually began trending on social media and was then published by a significant number of prominent news outlets and tabloids in other countries. It took just 7 days for the falsehood to go from an obscure website to international news. The second example, also cited to the committee by Mr. Nemo, related to a disinformation campaign against Morgan Freeman after he had said that a foreign country had attacked the US using online activity during the 2016 US presidential election. An obscure website run by trolls first initiated a hashtag #StopMorganLie, which, while publishing the claim that he was lying. This hashtag was then amplified on social media, including by a group claiming to be independent activists from a foreign country. It was finally picked up by the mainstream media of the foreign country, who claimed that the counter-movement against Morgan Freeman's assertion was a big Twitter outcry, even though online traffic using the hashtag amounted to only about 1,000 posts. It was later discovered that the accounts of the so-called activists were actually controlled by a troll factory in the foreign country. What appeared to be an organic movement was really an orchestrated campaign. And that's the evidence of Mr. Ben Nemo when he came before the Select Committee. Now, turning to the government's response. On the evening of 8th November, MES lodged a police report in relation to the STR article. Action will be taken against the wrongdoers based on the outcome of the police investigations and on the advice of the Attorney General's chambers. We also took active steps to debunk the falsehoods and stem their dissemination. The Singapore High Commission in Malaysia stated categorically that the article was clearly libelous, and this was carried by a number of mainstream media outlets in Malaysia. Notably, STR did not carry the clarification. IMDA issued a request to STR on 9th November to take down the article. STR declined to do so. IMDA proceeded to direct the internet service providers to block the STR website, and they have since done so. IMDA also asked Facebook to deny access to the post on STR's Facebook page, on the basis that the post contains material that is contrary to the public interest, thereby constituting prohibited content under the IMDA's Internet Code of Practice. Facebook declined to do so. This is surprising. First, the post is clearly false, as I have explained above. The Sarawak post on which the STR post was based and quoted itself published a Facebook post calling the article on the coverage, which had reproduced the STR article, misleading and erroneous. It later published another post debunking the false claims. Many Malaysian publications, including the China Press, took down the articles after our High Commissioner in Malaysia issued a clarification. Second, as the IMDA has made clear, the post contains materials that violates Singapore law. Despite the clear falsehoods attacking Singapore, Facebook did not consider that there were sufficient grounds for it to remove the post. Because of this, Facebook's post with the false claims continues to be available on Facebook. Facebook's reluctance to remove the post is surprising. In April 2017, it had said that, and I quote, "It is committed to doing everything it can to reduce the spread of false news to as close to zero as possible," unquote. In its written representations to the Select Committee on Deliberate Online Falsehoods, Facebook said that, and I quote, "It believed that reducing the spread of misinformation and false news is a shared responsibility between public authorities, tech companies, newsrooms, and classrooms," unquote. Facebook has also given assurances that it would work closely with the Singapore authorities to swiftly address online falsehoods. And yet, when there is an actual falsehood that attacks Singapore, Facebook refuses to remove the content. Facebook has said, in response to media queries on its decision, that, and I quote, "It does not have a policy that prohibits alleged falsehoods, apart from in situations where this content has the potential to contribute to imminent violence or physical harm," unquote. There are many situations where serious harm is caused even though there is no potential for imminent violence or physical harm. And as members will appreciate, the slow drip of poison over a period of time can one day result and burst into violence. And Facebook will do nothing about it, despite the various statements made in Singapore and elsewhere. It will allow itself to be on the platform, to allow itself to be a platform for the spread of lies, falsity, to poison and divide societies through such lies, encourage xenophobia, and profit from that. This incident therefore demonstrates why we cannot rely on the goodwill of service provider platforms to protect Singapore from disinformation campaigns. It reinforces the Select Committee's recommendations that legislative powers are needed to protect us from deliberate online falsehoods. In conclusion, this incident demonstrates, once again, the insidious nature of deliberate online falsehoods. When STR failed the first time to gain traction, it simply repackaged the same falsehoods. That was then sought to give credibility by mainstream media. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Morali.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thank the Honourable Senior Minister of State for the detailed explanation. It's an old saying, untruths travel halfway around the world when the truth is just putting on its boots. But on the basis of what the Honourable Senior Minister of State has shared, it seems that untruth has picked up pace since. I have two supplementary questions. One, in relation to Facebook's action, did Facebook demote the news, the fake news, pursuant to its protocol dealing with fake news? And number two, a more general question dealing with the social media giants. Does the Honourable Senior Minister of State think the attitude of these giants would be different if the direction were made by an independent body, for example, a judiciary, instead of a government agency? Thank you.
Well, I reiterate that we've been disappointed with Facebook's failure to remove the clear falsehood. And let me just reiterate that STR had made a publication quoting directly from a report called the Sarawak Report. And in fact also quotes an interview granted by an editor of the Sarawak Report. The Sarawak Report itself, having seen the STR version of the article, published a very clear statement, not once, but twice, calling out the STR report as being false, erroneous, and misleading. And despite that, Facebook has not seen fit to remove its content or block the STR Facebook page. As we have seen, the spread is not just quick, it's wide. So at this point in time, there are limited options to stem the spread and the influence of such online falsehoods. It's difficult to curtail them. And so to answer your second question, yes, perhaps so, but there's probably a need for levers to be given so that these can be arrested, can be stopped. And we've seen the proliferation rate and speed and the reach. And so something has to be done, and the Select Committee has made recommendations to consider precisely this, the appropriate measures to be taken so that these falsehoods and the proliferation of these falsehoods, which, as Mr. Murali says now, travels faster, can be stemmed. On your second point as to whether there has been a demotion or deranking of the article, it does not appear to us to have been so. But as I said, our primary assessment is that rather than being demoted or deranked, it ought not even have been put up in the first place. Thank you.